Now that we've gotten our first trailer for the upcoming Predator film coming to theaters, I thought it'd be a perfect time to have a look at the NECA Toys Predator 30th Anniversary Collection Jungle Hunter Masked Prototype. Deep in the Central American jungle, the Predator is hunting humans for sport. Armed with its plasma caster, wrist blades, and cloaking technology, the Predator methodically stalks and kills the opponents he deems worthy. The Jungle Hunter Predator collects the skulls and spines of its victims as trophies and skins his prey, leaving the bodies hanging from the trees. When the Special Forces team is dispatched on a rescue mission, they soon become the Predator's prey. As I'm about to take the height measurements, how tall this figure is, I gotta come clean about something. I've had these figures for a while and I just never got around to reviewing them, so it actually sparked my interest again, having seen the trailer, which again is debatable as to how that movie's gonna turn out, but I thought it'd be a perfect time to go back and have a look at the 30th Anniversary Collection. Just never got a chance to do it sooner. That being said, let's go ahead and take the tape measure, and starting from the bottom of his feet and working his way up to the top of his helmet, the Jungle Hunter Masked Prototype figure stands at almost, I think it'd be safe to say, exactly 8 inches in height. He gets a standard variety of accessories, although a much more slimmed down amount. First things first, he comes with his plasma caster shoulder-mounted cannon, which really a lot of these, in fact the figure as a whole, we're going to have a sense of deja vu because NECA has really released a lot of the NECA Predator figures in the past, and a lot of these seem very similar, if not familiar, so probably not a whole lot to touch base on. But that being said, I do like at least the paint that's been applied to it. A very dark metallic silver, but you've got a bit of a darker wash in there, kind of getting into those little creviced, detailed areas. Only a darker paint can really do the job of bringing a lot of those out in the forefront. Especially on this side too, you get a lot more of that darker. A lot of these details are popping on this. Before I install it, there's clamp points on the top here, these little notches, and a little notch down below. I'll show you how that gets into place in a second. But I want to show you that the caster cannon, the plasma caster cannon, does have posability to it. This hinges back and forth. I'm always really worried that this is going to break, as it's such a very small little pin and hinge there. But it does rotate back and forth, and this also rotates all the way around it. Yeah, actually you can see it. There it is right there. It sits itself on a ball joint. To think of toys back in the day, if only they had only made things with ball joints, how much easier and how much more fun kids would get out of toys if everything was just using ball joints. It's just such an easier, more simplistic and yet more effective route of making figures essentially posable. We can go ahead and attach it to the back of the figure. Now you're probably going to have the same problems as figures always come with, especially the Predator figures specifically. If you put the caster on, it's simply a case, see there's a little hole, little opening there. This tab fits underneath that, and then you're basically just tipping it forward. And when you tip it forward, it locks itself at the very least on the one back end, and then you can kind of just push this down on the top there to lock it into place. But what I was going to say though is if you've collected any of the NECA Predator figures in the past, you probably will have the same thing happening here. When you rotate the head, a lot of times this pops the plasma caster shoulder cannon off completely. So you can either glue it or just be very careful when you are moving the head back and forth that you don't accidentally pop it right off. The other accessory that comes included with the figure is a very default skull and spinal cord. And by saying default, I hope not to take anything away from it. It's simply just the case that we get so many of these. Between the trophy packs and the other Predator figure releases, we've gotten this little skull and spine so very frequently. Although I have to admit that the coloring is rather different, because usually it's either like skull coloring, like bone coloring, or it's very bright red. having almost as if just happened. Here, on the other hand, we get a more treated to a pink skull and spine. So it's something that has not recently been ripped out of the body, but at the very least is still drenched in blood and slime as he's holding it. Speaking of holding it, though, unfortunately one hand is completely closed shut, so the only way that you can hold it is by putting into this hand here. Now, I would say a little on the disappointing end of things that the hands, only really one hand allows you to hold it. Now, before you say, well, if you've collected enough NECA Predator figures, you can really mix and match these hands, which is very true. You can do that. However, what I like to generally do is I like to think in the mindset of somebody who has never picked up a NECA Predator figure before. Maybe for that individual, they may not have other Predator figures that they can make use of, like pulling hands from one Predator and mixing and matching. So I try to think of those collectors. Those collectors may have wanted a secondary hand. To be fair, though, there's nothing else on the figure that he could hold. There's no other accessories. So it's a valid argument, I suppose. Why would he need an extra hand? He doesn't really have anything else he can hold. So it kind of is on the fence as to whether this guy really should have come with extra hands. I guess based on this accessory, the answer would probably be no. Let's go ahead and take this out of his hand here. A couple of working components on the Predator here is, of course, his blades. Those extend and retract. You're only going to get that much clearance to it, not a considerable dropout of the spikes. Again, these are a little bit of a softer plastic, so be mindful of those. And then on the other side, he of course has his computer console, his little activation console, which I can spin the arm around. There we go. Open that up, and you can see that he's already got his self-destruct, which seems to be a default go-to for NECA when they do give you these little room opening sections here. There always seems to be the starting point of the countdown timer already in play. So based on this, I may want to move along with this review. Would definitely not want this going off. I will say, though, that the hinge, I don't know if it's just mold, the constant use of these molds, but the hinge is very loose on this. It just flops around a lot. And actually, if I tip the arm slightly to the side, I was having it earlier where like this, it just kind of drops out. Of course, it's not doing it now while I'm reviewing, but it is a little on the loose side. Standard fare really can be said for the majority of this figure, from basically like the head, the neck area, down to the bottom of its feet. It's a lot of tried and true go-to, let's reuse the mold. What makes this one so unique to the others, though, is the inclusion of the brand new head sculpt, the Jungle Hunter prototype helmet. Now, it harks back a little bit to me to like the boar, I think it was the boar Predator, and the Celtic or Celtic, depending on how you want to pronounce it, Predator from AVP. I do know that when I did the review of the Celtic/Celtic Predator, I got a lot of opposing arguments as to the correct pronunciation. You could actually pronounce, if you could believe this, Celtic either way. It depends on, I believe, whether it was the Romans or, I'm trying to think of the other one, depending on how they related to the term Celtic. I think one called it Celtic, one called it Celtic. You could go with either or. But I do really like the helmet, though. The helmet is really neat. It is not removable, despite for the fact that it does look like there's this gap. This really, I should be able to stick a finger or a screwdriver or something flat in there and pop it off. It's just an illusion, my friends. You cannot remove the helmet. The helmet is completely affixed. There's no means to actually take it off. Love the detailing, though, to the helmet. It's got definitely a much more, I don't want to say steampunk, but like looking at it, it's definitely made of much more mechanical components as opposed to just being a very smooth, defaulted helmet. All these cool little intricate details on the sides, as well as this part I love. It's almost like the vent, the front vent of like a truck or like a, like a military vehicle. It has a very organic look, but it also has a very like mechanical look to it. The paint does well to accent a lot of this, even like areas, unfortunately, because you cannot remove it. Despite that, they even have gone in and painted these little freckles and spots on the side of the Predator's face. Ideally, if you could remove the helmet, which again doesn't seem to be the case here. Spin the figure around. You've got the tendrils, the tentacles, the dreads, I should say, of his hair, all making use of soft plastic. Each of the little ringlets are all very carefully, meticulously painted in gold, while the hair itself is more of a shinier, just black plastic. Again, there's the back of the body. He's got this little skirt going on there. The armor is very close to the original Jungle Hunter Predator, kind of making use of a almost, I don't want to say bronze, but almost like a slightly dingier silver. It's got like little elements to it where it's got slight brownish tints to it, but it does look like it's hammered out armor. It doesn't have a very smooth, pristine look to it. Maybe at one point it does, but it certainly does not now. Like even like the knees have little marks and little chip-aways where it just looks like it's been heavily used, frequently used over the course of its battles and hunts. The figure does have peg holes on the undersides of its feet. Rest assured, though, the figure stands perfectly fine. I don't have any issues whatsoever with the figure standing. A couple of other things, too. He's got some ropes, some necklaces there of various different bones. Smaller bones on the top, more of spinal bones on the sides, and then he's got these little little bones on the sides there as well. The skin has what I could describe as only being like a slight wet slickness to it. It's got a sheen to it that if you tip it to the side, especially more of the browner areas up here, it gives off a reflection to it. Gives it that wet look that I do quite like quite a bit on here. Okay, so let's look at his posability. His head rotates left and right. I'm being very mindful not to accidentally pop off the plasma caster, but head rotates back and forth, up and down. Shoulders hinge outward. Luckily, this little shoulder pad here is loose enough or separated enough from the rest of it. So if I tip it up, you can see that it starts just forming a gap in between here and the bicep area of his arm. Like that. Arm does rotate back and forth. He's got the swiveling happening in the forearm. Actually, that's not necessarily true. He's got the double hinge in the elbow, but the swiveling actually happens past the cut of where the hinge in the elbow happens, so it swivels here, and he's got a ball joint in the hand. When we get to the waist, or first things first, he has an upper torso ball joint. Secondary, it seemed more like a hinge joint, but I'm thinking it's actually a ball joint by the way it has a little bit of give to it, tipping it back and forth. Legs split out, forward and back on the legs, top swivel cut on the thigh, double hinge on the knee, and then when you get to the feet, an adequate amount of ankle pivot, as well as the feet can move back and forth. Luckily, with these newer NECA figures, you're not only graced with an exquisite-looking sculpt, but sufficient articulation as well. As it seems to be the case when you are a reviewer here on YouTube, sometimes when you pick up things, you kind of put them to the side and you tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna get to those later, and then later turns into more later, and then more later, and then before you know it, you don't get a chance to look at the figures right away. It kind of worked itself to my benefit that the new Predator trailer hit theaters or to online, and of course it received some mixed reviews, some mixed opinions of it. I'm still on the fence as to whether I think the new format of Predator is going to work, but again, it may surprise me. I may enjoy it when it actually comes to theaters, but thank goodness for that trailer to remind me that I still had to have a look at the 30th anniversary Predator figures, so that's essentially what we're starting with here. I could have started with Dutch, but I thought it'd make more sense to kind of start with a Predator, kind of get the ball rolling. The trailer is called Predator, or a trailer is for a movie called Predator, so I thought it would be perfect to start the reviews with having a look at a Predator and then maybe looking on to Dutch afterwards. Jungle Hunter here has very notable traits, very similar looking traits to some of the other Predator figures that we've gotten in the past. Of course, the big standout feature on this particular figure is the new helmet, which again bears a little bit and inherits a little bit from the boar Predator, and of course quite a bit from the AVP Celtic or Celtic Predator for its design elements. And I really always liked those designed helmets, and I think it works quite well here on Jungle Hunter Predator, the masked prototype version as well. Of course, it's a superposable figure, not really much in the way of accessories, but if you've collected enough of these over the course of time, you can always mix and match these. And again, you still get the benefit of a superposable Predator that you can put on display. These should still be in comic book stores and some retail stores, should you be wishing to pick these up for yourself. We're going to have a look at the rest of the figures from the 30th anniversary line, so stay tuned for those. In the meantime, today we were having a look at the NECA Predator 30th Anniversary Jungle Hunter Masked Prototype. That's quite a mouthful, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to fit all of that in the title of this review. Speaking of reviews, more reviews and videos will be coming your way, but make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below. It will guarantee you that when new things coming onto this channel, you guys will be able to know right away. And also, if you can do me a solid, make sure you head over to this playlist or to my main page when you're finished this review. Scroll down the section that says videos or playlists, but specifically videos. See if there's any video that you may have missed along the way. Hitting the bell notification is fine and good, but apparently that's not fixing the problem either. And sometimes the newer videos that I'm posting onto YouTube, you guys aren't seeing at all. So one way to work around that is head over to I keep saying playlist, but the channel main page. Scroll down this section that says videos and see if there's anything that you may have missed along the way. New videos always, of course, new videos are always the trickier thing to get you guys to see. And we're going to try our best to kind of fix that, find a way kind of around that. And checking out the homepage is probably the best way to do so. As always, guys, more videos will be coming your way. As always, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch these videos. It does mean a lot, and I do, if you could believe it, I read every single comment that you guys post, and I try my best to reply to all of them. If I could say anything about myself, it would be the fact that I do try to reply to all your comments when you guys post them, so always welcome new comments. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.